In this video presentation, I'm going to show you how to fill out a Form 941. So the Form 941 is used to report all FICA taxes and our federal income taxes to the IRS. So that's our Social Security, our Medicare, and our federal income taxes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this exercise that's actually available to you in Angel, and we're going to use this to demonstrate how to fill out a Form 941. So in here we've got John Granatelli of Granatelli Motors pays his employees monthly. The following payroll information is for the first quarter of the year, so for January, February, and March. Assume that the company is a monthly depositor. Okay, so here I've already calculated their wages for January, February, and March. Notice that no one has already met the cap, okay, for OASDI. And then we've got, I've already calculated the OASDI, the HI, and the federal income tax. These are all the employees' withholdings. And then I've also got the employer's portion of OASDI and HI here calculated. I've given you the address and telephone number for the company. I've given you their EIN number. And I've told you that the number of employees on March 12th was 26. So the first thing we're going to do is complete the Form 941 for the first quarter of the year. All right, so let's go back to our 941. And if you have that sheet of paper beside you, I'd probably print it out while I go through this so that you'll see where I'm pulling these numbers from. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is put in our EIN number. So it goes here. And then we're going to put in the name. So here they want the actual name of the owner of the company. So this would be John Granatelli. And then the trade name would be the business name, so Granatelli Motors in this case. And then you're going to put in the address. So that would be 3709 5th Avenue. And that's in Chicago, Illinois, 60605. All right, one thing you have to do on a Form 941 is pick which quarter you're talking about. So in this case, we're doing the first quarter, so we're going to check the January, February, March. All right, so now let's go down to the line. So part one, they just is where you're actually going to calculate the tax that you owed, okay? So the number of employees who receive wages, tips, or other compensation for the pay period, March 12th for quarter one. That's why I gave you that information here, that the number of employees on March 12th was 26. So if we go back here to line one, we'll just put 26 there. And then they want to know your total wages, tips, and other compensation. So this is anything that you've paid to your employees. So in our case, we had paid $74,895.92. So that's going to go here in line 2, $74,895.92. And we do have to worry about cents in payroll class, okay? So then they want to know how much income tax was withheld from your wages. So this is your federal income tax. So if we look back, our federal income tax withheld, I told you, was $12,372.13. So we can put that back here on line 3, $12,372.13. If you had no wages, tips, or other compensation that's subject to Social Security or Medicare tax, for some reason you were exempt from that, then you would check here and go to line 6. Okay. We're not going to have somebody like that though. So here we go. Our taxable Social Security wages. So again, we didn't meet the cap, so it's going to be all of it. So $74,895.92. If you had met the cap, if some employee had met the cap, then obviously that would not be the same number as up here as your total wages. You'd have to calculate, okay, how much is really taxable for Social Security. Then you're going to multiply that by the 12.4% or 0.124. That is the 6.2% for the employee and the 6.2% for the employer. If you do that, you should get $9,287.09. Notice that they have Social Security wages and tips actually separated. So if you, they want your wages on line 5A and then any tips that are subject to Social Security on 5B. Then we don't have any of that, we just had wages. So we're going to move down to 5C. Here they want your Medicare wages and tips. So here they put the Medicare together. Again, our taxable amount is $74,895.92, our total wages. And here we're going to multiply by 0.029 or 2.9%. Again, that's the 1.45% for the employee, 1.45% for the employer. Sorry. So 2171.98. So here in line 5D, we have the additional Medicare tax withholding. So this would be for anyone that makes over $200,000 in a calendar year. They have to pay another 0.9% of Medicare. This is just the employee tax. We're not going to have one of those, but know that that is there if you have someone that makes over $200,000. So in line 5E, then we're going to just add up our column 2, 5A, 5B, 5C, 5D. So 9287.09 plus 2171.98 gives us 11,459.07. All right, you're not going to have to worry about line 5F, but let's figure out line 6. That would be this is where we add up our federal income tax from line 3 plus our FICA taxes from line 5E. So line 6 here would be $23,831.20. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is we're going to figure out how much we actually deposit, because the 941 is really what it is it reconciles what you owed to what you actually deposited. Okay, and so what we're going to do is figure out what we actually deposited. So we're going to say that we deposited all of these taxes each quarter, okay? So in that case, what I'm going to do is figure out, okay, if I'm just going to add all of these up. So therefore, in January, I owed and paid all of these. So when I add those up, I get $6,300, okay? Then in February, I added up all my OASDI, HI, FIT, OASDI, and HI that I owed, and I get $7,993.96. Okay, and then for March, I'm going to add up all of my OASDI, HI, FIT, and OASDI, HI, and I get $95.37.23. And then if we add all of those together, this is what we should have deposited in January, $6,300, in February, $7,993.96, and in March, $9,537.23. That's what in total what we should have deposited for the whole quarter. If we add that up, we get $23,831.19. Okay, so this is what we should have deposited. So what we're going to do is go back to, remember that number, and we're going to go back to our Form 941, $23,831.19, and we're going to come down here and say, okay, in line 11, that's what I deposited. So $23,831.19, okay? So what we've got is, here's what I calculated as my taxes, and here's what I actually deposited. Are they different? Just by a penny, okay? And so if it's just by a penny, a couple pennies, $1, maybe $2, most of that is because of rounding. And so what we're going to do is we're going to adjust for fractions of cents. So in here, to get from here down to this number, what do I need to do? I need to subtract a penny, right? So I'm going to, here on line 7 where it says current quarters adjustment for fractions of cents, I'm going to come in and put in my penny. When I do that, I'm going to then be able to come down here to line 10, and I'm not going to have anything for line 8 or line 9, okay? So I'm going to come down here to line 10 where they want me to add up line 6 through 9, and so I'm going to have my $23,831.20 minus a penny, so I get $23,831.19. At the end of the day, I want line 10 and line 11 to be equal, okay? So then You're not going to have to worry about your COBRA premium assistance payments either in line 12A. So then in line 13, we're going to add together line 11 and 12A. So that's 23,831.19 plus 0. So that would be 23,831.19. And we're not going to have a balance due because we're going to assume that we already paid it, okay? And we haven't overpaid, okay? So then what we're going to do is go over here to part 2. And so first you're going to put in your name. Again, that's John Granatelli. And then you'll put in the EIN number, which is 89-178-7779. And as I said in the problem, the company is a monthly depositor, okay? So we're going to go back to our 941 and notice that in part 2 they want to talk about what you deposited and what your tax liability was. So here the first one would be if your return is for less than $2,500, okay? And so in that case you would check here. We're not going to have one of those, okay? We're always going to owe more than that. And so here you're going to check if you're a monthly scheduled depositor. So I'm going to check there because that's what we are. And then you're going to put your tax liability in for each month. Well, that's what we calculated over here. Our tax liability for January was $6,300. So we'll come here and put in $6,300. Our tax liability for month 2 was $7,993.96. So we'll come here and put in, come down to month 2, $7,993.96. And then our total amount for month 3, tax liability, was $9,537.23. So that's what we're going to put for month 3. $9,537, what was it? 23 cents. Okay, and if we added all those together, we already did that, we get $23,831.19. Okay, so then we can put that in, $23,831.19, and notice that this total should equal what we have on line 10, which is here, and it does. Okay, all right. Part 3 would be if your business closed or stopped paying wages. That's when you would complete that part. Or if you have a third-party designee, like a CPA or somebody like that, that you would rather the IRS talk to. So here in Part 5 is where John Granatelli would need to sign his name, put the date in, then he actually type his name in here and print his title, maybe he's the owner, and then you put in this phone number here, which I gave you was 773-555-2119. Okay, and then if you're a paid preparer, you would actually fill this part in if you're a paid CPA. Okay. So then what we're going to do is, this is if we're a monthly depositor, okay? What if we're not a monthly depositor and instead we are a semi-weekly depositor? In this case, instead of filling out this part on the back, you're going to check here. You're a semi-weekly depositor. And then you actually have to complete Schedule B here. So I'm going to bring up Schedule B, and this is what it looks like. And so here we're going to again put in our EIN number, which in our case is 89-178-7779. Our name again is John Granatelli, and our calendar year we're assuming we're in 2013. Okay, and then you also have to check which quarter. So here, what we're going to do is I've actually given you these paydays, okay? And so on January 5th, our tax liability was $31.50. So here, what you're doing, you're not just saying when you paid the tax, you're saying when you owed the tax, which should be on the payday. Remember, we owe tax anytime our employees are paid. So on January 5th, we had a tax liability of $31.50. So we come to our Schedule B, we find month 1, that would be January for quarter 1, and then we find the box that says 5 for January 5th, and then our total amount then would be $31.50. Okay, and then the other day was January 20th, so that's our next one. So on January 20th, so we find the box for the 20th, and we put in $31.50 again, because that was our tax liability. I think those are our only payments in January. So then if we add those together, we should get a total of $6,300. Okay, so we put that there. Then we go to month 2, which would be for quarter 1, it would be February. So here we had a payday of February 10th, where we owed $2,664.65. So we come here and we put in our $2,664.65. Our next payday is February 18th, where we owed $24.50. So we're going to find the 18th and put in $24.50. And then we also paid on February 27th, and our tax liability there was $2879.31. So that was on the 27th and $2879.31. If you add up all 3 of those for the month, then you should get $7,993.96. And then in month 3, that would be our March and quarter 1. We paid on March 5th, and we had tax liability of $31.70. So we'll find March 5th and put in our $31.70. Then we'll have our March 17th, $31.94.23. So March 17th, $31.94.23. And the last one, March 30th, we owed $31.73. $31.73. And so then I'm going to add those 3 together for my total tax liability of $9537.23. And then here you'll just add up your total tax liability for all 3 months. So $6,300 plus $7993.96 plus $9537.23 gives us a total tax liability for the quarter of $23,831. $23,831 and then 19 cents. So this number should agree to your line 10 on your Form 941, which if you look, line 10, $23,831.19. And so that's it. So if you're a semi-weekly depositor, you don't check any of those, but you just check this and then go to your Schedule B. Of course, you still have to sign here in Part 5. So let's just look and see what other things I asked you. In 2A, I asked you what are the payment due dates of each of the monthly liabilities, assuming all the deposits were made on time. So remember that here our due dates are going to be the 15th of the month after the month when the payroll was paid. So for January, our due date would be February 15th. In February, our due date would be March 15th, and in March, our due date would be, of course, April 15th. So again, that's if you are a monthly depositor. And what's the due date of the filing of Form 940, assuming all deposits were made on time? Remember, that is due on the last day of the month following a quarter. So if our quarter ended on March 31st, our due date for that would be April 30th for the 941. And that's how you do a 941.